You know the image.
Yeah.
It's absolutely iconic. You picture Cole Porter, and what do you see?
Oh, you see the whole scene.
Exactly. You see the martini glass, you see the impeccably tailored tuxedo, the little cigarette holder clamped between a perfect smile.
Right. And he's probably in some penthouse apartment overlooking Manhattan.
Yes. Or a Venetian palazzo. And you just have this mental picture of the guy who wrote "You're the top," on a cocktail napkin while sipping champagne, barely breaking a sweat.
The whole thing looks completely effortless.
It looks solitary. It looks like he existed above the fray.
And that right there is one of the most successful personal branding exercises of the entire 20th century.
Yeah.
That image of the urbane wizard of Tin Pan Alley who just floated on a cloud of bubbles and wit. It's so potent.
But that's the greatest con he ever pulled, because we have this huge stack of notes here for this week's installment of Porter-Pedia that proves the solitary genius was actually, well, he was a committee.
A committee, I like that.
He didn't survive on champagne alone. He survived on a very specific, very protective group of friends.
That's exactly right. Welcome, everyone, to Porter-Pedia. This is our dedicating space to really obsess over all things Cole Porter, and today we are pivoting. We're moving away from the sheet music for a bit and looking at the support system.
It's scaffolding.
The scaffolding, because behind that veneer of elegance, behind the sparkle, was a man who was deeply guarded, incredibly secretive, and this is the paradox, completely dependent on other people.
It's a bit of a contradiction, isn't it? We think of him as this fiercely independent creative force, but the research suggests he was almost terrified of being alone.
Terrified might be a strong word, but reliant is definitely accurate. He wasn't a solitary genius. He relied on what one biographer calls a constellation of loyal friends.
A constellation, that's a great term.
I love that term because he really did navigate by them. They were his North Stars, his anchors, his entire navigation system. And without this specific group of people, the Cole Porter we know, and more importantly, the music we know, arguably wouldn't exist in the same way.
So these weren't just party guests who came over to drink his booze and listen to him play the piano.
Not at all.
These were effectively the guardians of glamour and genius. And that's who I want to meet today. We've got quite the cast list here. The wife, the foil, the socialite, the patrons, and the collaborator.
It sounds like the setup for a great mystery novel.
It really does.
Yeah.
But it's the story of his life.
Yeah.
So let's start at the absolute beginning, the foundation, the bedrock of the whole operation. We have to talk about the silent pillar.
Linda Lee Porter.
Linda.
Born Linda Lee Thomas. And to really understand her role, you have to understand who she was before she even met Cole. She wasn't just, waiting around in the wings to be some composer's muse.
Right. She had her own identity, her own power. She was a Southern socialite, she was a widow, and she was wealthy. Not just comfortable. We're talking coal magnate wealthy.
Yes, incredibly wealthy.
Yeah.
She was the widow of Edward Thomas, who was the publisher of the New York Morning Telegraph and had made a fortune. But she was also a woman who had, let's say, seen the darker side of a conventional marriage. She valued beauty, she valued order, and she really, really valued stability.
So when she meets Cole, what happens?
They meet and they marry in 1919, and she remains his wife, his constant, until she dies in 1954. But this marriage, it's the thing that confuses people the most when they look at it through a modern lens.
Okay, well, let's just get right to it then. Let's address the elephant in the room immediately. Cole Porter was gay.
Yes.
Or, at the very least, he had a very active, lifelong, romantic life with men. Linda knew this from the start. So the first question everyone asks is, was this just a beard situation? Was it a total sham?
See, that's the cynical modern take, and I think it really misses the deep nuance of their relationship. The sources are very, very clear on this. This was a marriage of deep, profound affection and partnership. It just wasn't a marriage of sexual intimacy.
So why do it? I mean, for Cole, the benefit seems pretty obvious. But for Linda, she's rich, she's famously beautiful, she's established in society. Why marry a songwriter who, in 1919, hadn't even written his biggest hits yet? He wasn't Cole Porter yet.
Not in the way we think of him. You have to look at the why from her perspective.
Yeah.
Linda wanted companionship. She wanted a partner, but perhaps without the volatility and the demands she might have experienced in the past. It was an aesthetic alliance.
Aesthetic alliance, I like that.
Cole was charming, he was brilliant, he was endlessly entertaining. He offered a life dedicated to beauty and art. And for Cole, the why was, frankly, survival.
Because of the era.
Exactly. We absolutely cannot overstate how dangerous it was to be openly homosexual in the early 20th century. It wasn't just frowned upon or a social taboo.
It was a crime?
It was a crime. It was a career ender. It was a potential prison sentence. It was social death. Linda offered him a shield, a beautiful, elegant, unimpeachable shield.
But how did that shield actually work in a practical sense? Was it just about showing up to parties together and being seen?
It was so much more than that. It was about social prestige. Linda brought an immense amount of gravity to their union. She was older than him, she was much richer than him at the time, and she was socially superior to him.
So she had the upper hand, in a
In
way.
every way that mattered in that world. By marrying Linda, Cole wasn't just some guy from Indiana who wrote catchy tunes. He became the ultimate cosmopolitan composer. She burnished his image, she curated it, she made him safe for high society.
So she essentially validated him. If Linda Lee Thomas, this icon of taste in society, says he's okay, then the Astors and the Vanderbilts and everyone else, they have to agree.
Precisely. And she took that job incredibly seriously. She didn't just stand there and look pretty. She managed their entire domestic sphere with like a military precision that was masked as effortless grace.
What does that mean, manage their sphere?
She hosted these salon-style dinners in their homes in Paris and Venice that were absolutely legendary. And the purpose of those dinners wasn't just to party. It was to keep the world at arm's length.
Control the environment.
Exactly. If you control the guest list, you control the narrative. By hosting everyone at their home, under Linda's very careful supervision, they could create this perfect bubble. A bubble where Cole could be himself, to an extent, but still be protected by the structure of a traditional marriage. No one was going to gossip in Linda Porter's house.
The notes also mention she was his first audience. That implies she had creative input too, not just social.
Oh, absolutely. She shaped his standards of taste and refinement. We think of Cole Porter as being synonymous with sophistication, with never having a word out of place. A lot of that was filtered through Linda.
So she was his editor.
She was his ultimate editor. She had an incredible eye and an incredible ear for what was too much or, not quite clever enough. If a song or a lyric passed the Linda test, he knew it was ready for the world. She was his barometer of taste.
There's a really powerful quote in here from George Axelrod, the playwright, who knew them both very well. He said she was the best thing that ever happened to him.
And he added a crucial part to that. He said, and he knew it. That's the key. Cole wasn't ungrateful or taking her for granted. He was deeply, profoundly aware that without Linda, he would have been completely adrift, both socially and maybe even artistically.
And we really see the truth of that when we look at the end of her life.
It's actually quite tragic. When Linda died in 1954 from emphysema, it wasn't just the loss of a wife. For Cole, it was the loss of his entire infrastructure, the whole world he had built.
The whole system collapsed.
It really did. The sources are unanimous on this. He never really returned to his previous level of productivity or, more importantly, his joy.
The joie de vivre it evaporated.
Completely. It did. There's a very touching detail in one of the biographies that says he visited her grave at the Waldorf Astoria private cemetery regularly, almost obsessively. And he told a friend, in a moment of real candor, "My whole life went with her."
My whole life, think about that.
It's an incredible statement. This is a man who had lovers, who had this whole other life that was completely separate from her, a life she knew about but wasn't part of, and yet when she was gone, he felt like his whole life was gone.
It suggests that the secret life wasn't the real life then. The real life was the partnership he had with Linda.
Or maybe that the partnership with Linda was the foundation that allowed all the other lives to even exist, and when you take away the foundation, the entire house just starts to crumble. She truly was the silent pillar. She held the roof up over his head for 35 years.
Okay, so if Linda was the anchor, the safety, the one who made sure the bills were paid and the reputation was absolutely pristine, Cole needed an outlet. He needed a release for the other side of his personality.
Oh, definitely.
The side that wanted to be biting and camping and, let's be honest, a little bit mean.
Enter the wild card.
Monty Woolley.
Monty Woolley.
The witty foil. I feel like everyone needs a Monty Woolley in their life, provided they have very, very thick skin.
Laughs, yes. And provide they have the energy to keep up with him.
So give us the profile. Who was this guy?
Monty Woolley was a Yale man, just like Cole. That's a recurring theme. They met in the drama scene at the university. He started his career as a drama critic and a professor at Yale, which makes total sense given his personality. But most people today probably know him as a film star from the 30s and 40s.
Right. He famously played the lead role in the film version of The Man Who Came to Dinner.
And if you've ever seen that movie, he is basically just playing himself.
A slightly exaggerated version of himself, maybe?
Maybe not even that exaggerated. He's commanding, he's acerbic, he's terrifyingly articulate, and he has this magnificent beard.
So his defining characteristic was this acerbic wit. If Linda was the anchor of safety, Monty was the jolt of danger.
He was the wild card. He was the intellectual and emotional partner steeped in what the notes call repartee in camp. He was one of the few people on the planet who could match Cole Porter in urbane cynicism and this kind of cultivated mischief.
They spoke the same language.
Yeah.
A very specific language of double entendres and inside jokes that probably went over most people's heads.
Completely over their heads. And Monty serves a very, very different function than Linda. Linda represents the acceptance of the straight world. Monty represents the glorious, witty, coded underground. He was a secret keeper.
And that's a key distinction, isn't it? Linda knew about Cole's gay life, but she wasn't in it. She existed apart from it.
Exactly. Monty was in it. He had long-standing first-hand knowledge of Porter's romantic life with men because he was often right there, participating in the same social circles. He was a fixture in that queer, expat artistic life in Paris and Venice.
But how did he handle that knowledge?
That's the unique part. He didn't treat it with shame or with this heavy sense of secrecy. He treated it with a kind of defiant humor. He made it a joke, which disarmed it and took away its power to hurt them.
The humor is the best part.
Oh.
And there's a story in our notes today that I absolutely want to spend some time on because it is so cinematic. It is the perfect example of their dynamic. It's the bearded lady anecdote.
Oh, this is the classic. It's the perfect encapsulation of everything Monty Woolley was about.
So, set the scene for us. Where are we? When are we?
We are in Paris. It's the roaring 1920s. We are at one of those high-stakes, high-glamour parties that the Porters were famous for, the kind where the champagne flows like water and everyone is secretly judging everyone else's jewelry.
The air is just thick with sophistication.
And probably tension.
Yeah.
And into this perfectly curated, elegant room walks Monty Woolley. Now, Monty was already a distinct-looking guy. He had this big theatrical beard, which wasn't super common for younger men at the time. But he's not alone.
He has a guest on his arm.
A mysterious, incredibly elegant woman.
Describe her for us. What does she look like?
She's wearing a shimmering silver lame gown. She's dripping in diamonds and pearls. She carries herself like a Russian Grand Duchess. You can just imagine the entire room going quiet, all the heads turning.
Who is she? Is she a countess? Is she a film star?
Exactly. So they walk through the crowd, which parts like the Red Sea. They approach the hostess, who would have been Linda Porter. The woman leans in to do the customary two-cheat air kiss. And that's when the record scratches.
The moment of truth.
Because as she gets close into that intimate greeting zone, the guests nearby and Linda herself realize something is off. The texture of her cheek against theirs isn't skin.
It's hair.
It's a full, finely combed, undeniably masculine beard.
A beard. In a silver gown and diamonds.
A full beard. She was a bearded lady. A circus performer, perhaps, or just someone Monty found and convinced to play along. But here is the absolute genius of Monty Woolley. Most people, if they pulled a prank like this, would start laughing. They'd break character and give the game away.
But not Monty.
Not Monty. He ignores it completely. He acts like this is the most normal thing in the world. He introduces her, he gets her a glass of champagne, he carries on.
So what happens? Do people just pretend not to notice?
For a while, probably, until finally someone just dying of curiosity and confusion goes up to him and asks, what is going on? And Monty, with that deadpan drama critic delivery, looks at them and says, ah, yes, dear, she has a rather severe hormone condition, but we can't let that interrupt one's social life, can we?
Laughs. It's just brilliant. It is so aggressive, but it's so polite at the same time.
And that's the key. It's aggressive politeness. It's a performance. And now look at Cole Porter's reaction to this chaos. Was he embarrassed? Did he tell Monty to get out of his house?
Not at all. He loved it. The notes say he was absolutely delighted. He had a famous quote about it, didn't he?
He did. He said Monty could upstage the entire ballet russe with just one eyebrow.
That reaction tells you everything you need to know. Cole lived in this world of high-stakes appearances, Linda's world, the world where everything had to look perfect. And Monty was the one person who was allowed to come in and puncture that balloon.
Monty brought the anarchy.
Yes. He was the pressure valve. If you spend all day, every day being the perfect gentleman composer, you need someone to come in with a bearded lady and just wreck the place, aesthetically speaking.
That's exactly. He provided what some have called emotional mirroring. He reflected the side of Cole that found all of high society secretly ridiculous, the part of him that wanted to mock it.
And he was a constant.
He was a constant. He stuck around through everything. He didn't die until 1963, just a year before Cole himself passed away.
So he was there for the whole ride.
The entire ride, through the Broadway hits, through the terrible writing accident in '37, through the years of pain and the creative decline. He was a living reminder of the fun, the mischief of the Yale days.
Okay, so we have the wife who provided the base, the foundation. We have the foil who provided the wit and the escape. Now, we need the person who built the stage.
Yeah.
Just because you could be a genius and you can have a great partner, but if nobody invites you to the party, nobody hears the songs. We need to talk about the architect of glamour.
Elsa Maxwell.
Now, Elsa Maxwell is such a fascinating figure because she does not fit the physical mold of the beautiful people she surrounded herself with.
Not even remotely. She was short, she was stout, she was famously opinionated. One writer described her as looking a bit like a bulldog, but she was, without question, the most powerful woman in international cafe society.
The notes describe her as both impresario and intimate. What does that mean?
It means she was a professional hostess, basically. But that word is too small for her. She was a force of nature. She didn't just host parties. She engineered social life on 2 continents. She curated the guest lists for the entire social scene of Europe, practically.
She was the ultimate gatekeeper.
Absolutely. If you were invited to an Elsa Maxwell party in Venice or on the Riviera, you existed. You were somebody. If you weren't on her list, you might as well have been invisible. And she decided very early on that Cole Porter was going to be the glittering centerpiece of her universe.
Why him? What did he have that she needed?
He was the perfect accessory, and I don't mean that in a diminishing way at all.
No, I get it, too.
Elsa's parties needed a focal point. They needed entertainment. They needed wit. Cole could sit at a piano for hours and improvise brilliant, slightly scandalous songs about the guests in the room. He single-handedly made her parties legendary.
And in return, she gave him access.
Unparalleled access. She introduced him to aristocrats, to artists, to the kind of old money Europeans that usually kept flashy new money Americans out.
Yeah.
She was the bridge between his talent and their status.
The notes also mention that she fed his love of role play and reinvention.
Yes. This is a really interesting point. Unlike many others who might have wanted Cole to be more respectable, Elsa loved the performance. She embraced his sexuality, his flamboyance. She understood that for Cole, life was a bit of a show, a bit of a theatrical production. And she basically provided the stage, the lighting, and the audience.
But they had a bit of a rocky relationship, didn't they? You put 2 egos that big in one room, they're bound to be fireworks.
Oh, they clashed constantly. They were both incredibly dominant personalities. They would have huge fights. They would freeze each other out for months. But at the end of the day, they were mutually dependent.
How so?
Elsa needed Cole's genius to validate her taste. He was her prize exhibit. And Cole needed Elsa's social validation to feel like he truly belonged in that upper echelon. They were a team, even when they hated each other.
And when they were on the same team and getting along, the level of mischief they could create went through the roof. We talked about Monty's prank with the bearded lady, but the death of the Fitches is on a whole other level of public deception.
The Death of the Fitches is a masterclass in social satire. It perfectly illustrates what the notes call the New Yorker tone of their friendship. It's sophisticated, it's a little bit cruel, and it is absolutely hilarious.
Okay, so walk us through this prank. This is the mid-1920s in Paris.
Right. Cole Porter, presumably bored with the actual real people in society, decides to just invent a couple out of thin air. He names them Mr. and Mrs. Fitch.
A perfectly boring name.
A perfectly boring name. And to make it even funnier, he gives them a hometown, Muskogee, Oklahoma.
Which, to a Parisian high society crowd, might as well be the moon.
It's the punchline in itself. So he starts planting little stories in the society columns of the Paris Herald, just little mentions. Mr. and Mrs. Fitch of Muskogee were seen dining at Maxim's last night. The delightful Mr. and Mrs. Fitch attended the opera. The Fitches were spotted at the races.
And to be clear, these people do not exist.
They are complete phantoms, ghosts. But here's the incredible thing about human nature, and specifically about high society nature. People started claiming they knew them.
No way. You're kidding.
It's true. It was the ultimate case of social FOMO, fear of missing out. These real socialites would see the name Fitch in the paper constantly and think, my God, everyone knows the Fitches except me. I must be out of the loop.
So they just started lying to save face.
They started lying. They'd say, oh, yes, I saw the Fitches at the Ritz just last week, a lovely couple. She was wearing the most marvelous pearls. They were inventing memories of people who never existed.
That is absolutely amazing. They were hallucinating social status.
And Elsa Maxwell is in on this from the beginning. She's probably fueling it, whispering about the charming Fitches at her parties, making people feel even more left out. But eventually, a game this big has to end.
How did it blow up? Who figured it out?
The editor of the Paris Herald eventually realized he'd been had. He figured out he'd been duped, that he'd been publishing the social calendar of ghosts for months, so he decides to get his revenge.
And what does he do?
He uses his own newspaper to kill them. He runs a very somber column right there on the society page, announcing that Mr. and Mrs. Fitch of Muskogee have died tragically in an automobile crash.
He killed them off. That's brilliant.
He killed them off, the end of the Fitches.
So what does Porter do? Does he finally confess? Does he apologize to the editor?
Of course not. He commits to the bit until the very end. He shows up at Elsa Maxwell's next party wearing a black armband in mourning, and at some point in the evening he stands up, raises his glass, and makes a grand toast to the dearly departed who were never alive.
I love that story because it really shows how they treated society as their own personal playground. It wasn't real to them. It was a game.
It was, but it also shows you that they were in on the joke together, that kind of shared secret, that shared sense of being smarter and wittier than everyone else in the room. It creates a powerful bond. It was us against the world, even if the world was just a bunch of people drinking champagne in Paris.
Okay, so we've established the fun, the games, the parties. But Porter was also a serious artist. And sometimes the Broadway label or the party boy label, that wasn't enough for him. He needed validation from the high art world.
And that is where the Riviera set comes in. Specifically, two people, Gerald and Sarah Murphy.
Now, these names might ring a bell for anyone who's a fan of American literature.
Oh, yes. If you've ever read F. Scott Fitzgerald's masterpiece, Tender is the Night, the main characters, Dick and Nicole Diver, are based directly on Gerald and Sarah Murphy. They were the undisputed golden couple of the American expatriate scene in France.
But they weren't just socialites in the way Elsa Maxwell was.
No, they were very different. Their whole vibe was different. They turned their villa at Cap d'Antibes, they called it Villa America, into this incredible creative oasis. Their parties weren't about climbing the social ladder. They were about art with a capital A.
What was their background?
Well, Gerald was a painter himself, a very good one. Associated with the modernist movement, he appreciated modernism, cubism, the avant-garde, so he saw something in Cole's music that others missed. Sarah was this quiet, magnetic, grounding force of support for all the artists around them, Picasso, Hemingway, Fitzgerald.
So why did they matter so much to Cole? By this point, he was already famous.
He was famous, yes, but he was often seen as light, frivolous. The notes use the term Broadway frivolity. The Murphys were different. They treated him as a serious composer. They listened to his music with the same intellectual seriousness they gave to Stravinsky or Picasso.
They legitimized his work on a different level.
They did, and they saw the work that went into it. There's a story here in the notes that I think is one of the most revealing anecdotes about Porter's entire process. It's called The Pianist in Pajamas.
This one feels really different from the prank stories. It's much more poignant.
It is. So, picture the scene. It's their villa at Cap d'Antibes. A big, glamorous party has just ended. It's sunrise. The candles have all burned out. The glasses are empty. Everyone, all the famous guests, has gone to bed.
Except Cole.
Except Cole. Gerald Murphy either wakes up early or never went to sleep, and he walks into the grand drawing room, and he finds Porter sitting all alone at the piano.
Still wearing his silk pajamas from the night before.
Still in his pajamas. Maybe he's thrown on a dressing gown. And he's playing the same few bars of music over and over and over again. He's obsessing over a bridge and a new song. He's completely stuck. He's struggling.
Which is something he rarely, if ever, showed to anyone. He always pretended the songs just fell out of his sleeve, fully formed.
Exactly. This was a moment of pure vulnerability. He looks up at Gerald Murphy and he says, "It keeps asking for something I'm not clever enough to find."
Wow. Not clever enough. That's Cole Porter saying that.
It is. And think about Gerald Murphy's response. He doesn't say, "Oh, don't be silly, Cole, you're a genius." He doesn't give him a platitude. He says something much more profound. He says, "Cole, if you weren't clever enough, you'd be asleep like the rest of us."
That is such an incredible thing to say to an artist.
It is. It validated the struggle. It validated the insomnia and the obsession. It reframed his artistic struggle not as a failure of talent, but as the very proof of his genius.
And did he fix the song?
He did. He found the missing piece. The song became "You Do Something to Me."
That moment. It feels so intensely private and important. It's the opposite of the public persona.
It reveals the aching perfectionism that was always hiding behind that easy, breezy facade. And actually, Gerald Murphy later said something that I think is the key to this entire deep dive. He said that what Cole wanted more than applause, more than anything, was someone who knew how hard he worked to make it look easy.
That's it, isn't it? The effortlessness was the hardest work of all.
A tremendous amount of work, the rhymes that seem so simple, the melodies that feel so inevitable, they didn't just happen. And the Murphys were the ones who saw the sweat. They were the ones who saw him in his pajamas at dawn, fighting with the music.
Now, before we move on from this whole Riviera set, we have to briefly mention one other figure. He's a bit more mysterious. The dandy in the shadows.
Howard Sturgis?
Yes, Howard Sturgis. He's often left out of the biopics and the big biographies, but the sources say he was deeply, deeply embedded in the inner circle.
The notes call him flamboyantly eccentric.
So what was his role?
He was another very wealthy American expatriate, no real need to work. But his role was different from the others. His role was privacy. He was one of the very few people who was allowed into the real private sphere, the one behind all the other private spheres.
How was he different from Monty Woolley then? Monty knew everything.
Monty was a performer. Monty would make a public joke about their shared private life. Sturgis was a vault. He knew the intimate details of the romantic escapades, the fears, the specific heartbreaks. The things that even Monty might joke about, Sturgis just held. He kept them safe.
So he helped Porter maintain the performance of being Cole Porter by giving him a truly safe space to take the mask off completely.
That's a perfect way to put it. He was a dandy, yes, but he was a loyal, silent vault of secrets. He was the guy you called when things went genuinely wrong and you didn't want a lecture or a joke. You just wanted a trusted presence.
Okay, so we have this incredible web of socialites, wits, and emotional anchors. But Cole Porter was also a working professional. He had deadlines, he had producers breathing down his neck, he had Broadway shows to write. We need to talk about the collaborator.
Herbert Fields.
Now, Herbert Fields feels a little different from the rest of this glamorous group. He wasn't spending his summers lounging on the beach at Cap d'Antibes, was he?
No, not in the same way. He is the contrast to all of this. He wasn't part of the high society cocktail circuit. He wasn't a darling of the fashion pages or the society columns. He was a worker. A Broadway pro.
He was the brother of the famous lyricist Dorothy Fields, right?
That's right. So he came from a very theatrical family. He was a Broadway librettist.
For those in our audience who might not know, can you explain what a librettist does in the context of a musical?
Sure. So Cole writes the songs, both the music and the lyrics. But the songs have to hang on a story. The dialogue, the plot, the structure of the show, the characters, that's the book of the musical. The librettist writes the book.
And Herbert Fields wrote the books for some of Porter's biggest hits.
Some of the absolute biggest. Anything Goes, Red, Hot and Blue. Dewberry was a lady. He was essential.
So why was he so important to this inner circle?
Because he provided structure, both literally for the shows and, in a way, for Cole's career. Cole's songs are brilliant, but they can be episodic. They are perfect little jewels. Fields was the one who built the necklace for the jewels to hang on. He provided the narrative efficiency that allowed the songs to truly shine.
So his role wasn't emotional support like the others.
It was professional support, which is just as vital for a working artist. Their dynamic was pragmatic, it was built on mutual respect, and Fields was absolutely crucial for Porter's breakthrough to mainstream smash hit popularity in the 1930s. You can have the greatest songs in the world, but if the book of the musical falls apart in the second act, the show fails. Fields made sure the shows worked.
He was the one person in this inner circle who was there primarily for the job.
Yes. Trusted professionally, without a doubt, but perhaps less of a social companion in the way that Elsa or Monty were. He grounded Cole in the day-to-day reality of Broadway, which is, at its heart, a business, not just a glamorous party.
So we have this incredible circle, Linda holding the fort, providing the elegant foundation, Monty keeping it funny, being the release valve, Elsa bringing the crowd, building the stage, the Murphys validating the art, Sturgis keeping the deepest secrets, and Fields doing the actual work.
It's a perfect ecosystem. For decades, it worked perfectly.
They prop him up, they protect him, they inspire him, but, and this is where the story turns so sharply, ecosystems are fragile, and time always moves on.
This is the part of the biography that really hurts to read. We're calling it the tragic pattern, because if you look at the dates, it's heartbreaking. The Guardians, almost all of them, they died before he did, and in quick succession.
Let's run down that timeline, because it really feels like a slow, inexorable drumbeat of loss.
It really does. It starts in 1954. Linda dies. And that's the foundation gone. The pillars removed. The silence in that big house must have been absolutely deafening for him.
And then what happens?
Then Howard Sturgis dies in 1955. Just a year later, the vault, the secret keeper, is gone.
Then Herbert Fields, the professional partner, he dies in 1958.
The collaborator is gone. And then the final devastating 1-2 punch. Monty Woolley and Elsa Maxwell both die in 1963.
In the same year?
Yeah.
Within months of each other?
Yes. The wit and the architect, the
Right.
anarchy and the stage, both gone.
And Cole himself died just a year later in 1964.
So in the last decade of his life, he essentially watched his entire world vanish. One by one, the people who knew him, the real him, behind the persona, they all left the room.
The notes here say his world grew smaller, grayer.
I think that's the only way to describe it. By the time Cole died, he was physically diminished, and we haven't even really touched on the horrific riding accident that crushed both of his legs and left him in constant agonizing pain for the last 30 years of his life. But he's also just emotionally diminished. The mirrors were gone.
What do you mean by mirrors? That's a powerful image.
These people, in their own way, they each reflected his best self back to him. Linda reflected his elegance and taste. Monty reflected his wit. The Murphys reflected his genius. Elsa reflected his glamour. When all of those mirrors break or just disappear, who are you? You're just a man in pain sitting alone in a big empty house.
It's such a sobering thought. For 3 solid decades, these people were his protection and his propulsion. They allowed him to be his full, complicated self.
Vulnerable, wounded, lonely, not just the toast of Broadway caricature.
And without them, he was just alone.
Utterly alone.
So bringing it all back around for this edition of Porter-Pedia, what does all of this mean for us? When we put on a Cole Porter record today, when we listen to Anything Goes or Night and Day, how should knowing this change what we hear?
I think it changes the texture of the music. It adds a layer of depth.
How so?
When you hear that sophisticated wit, that perfect, effortless rhyme, that seemingly unquenchable joy in the music, you should realize it wasn't created in a vacuum. It was incubated. It was nurtured and protected in a safe harbor. A harbor created by Linda, by Monty, by Elsa, by the Murphys.
So the music is a direct product of that collective friendship.
Absolutely. They kept the harsh realities of the world away from him so that he could create the beautiful, witty world that we all love to escape into in his songs.
I want to leave everyone with one final thought from the notes today. It goes back to that quiet moment in the south of France with Gerald Murphy. The idea that Porter wanted someone to know how hard he worked to make it look easy.
It's such a powerful, humanizing idea.
And it makes me think that maybe the ultimate role of a true friend isn't just to be an audience. It isn't just to applaud your successes. It's to be a witness.
Yeah.
It's to be the person who sees the struggle, who sees the late nights, who sees the effort behind the genius, and says, I see you working. I see how hard this is. And it's worth it.
That is a beautiful way to put it, to be a witness to the effort, not just the result.
Well, on that note, we are going to wrap up this week's edition of Porter-Pedia. Thank you so much for joining us for this trip inside Cole Porter's inner circle.
It was a real pleasure to meet them all.
We'll see you next week for another set of notes.
Thanks for listening.